It is my great pleasure this evening to introduce to you retired Colonel Brian M. Kennedy from the United States Marine Corps. His topic this evening is leadership in the 21st century, what's changed. Leadership is defined as higher levels of physical power control, spiritual, mental, motivational energy, management of the big picture, greater ability in specialized tasks or their execution, and a higher level of values, wisdom, or spirituality. And now, more than ever, our country needs leaders. On the way over, I was checking my mail, and they were doing the exit interviews of people leaving the polls, and they said in the past people were picking their choice of candidate based on how well that person's values aligned with theirs. This time, after the election, people who had voted were saying they were picking someone that they thought was the best leader. No, not everyone agrees on which person's the best leader, but that was why they were making their decisions. So the majority of the people were picking on who did they think would be a better leader for our country. Brian lives in Brian and his family live in Salem. He's a decorated military officer. He is a graduate of the Poland Seminary High School, and he was one of their 2006 distinguished alumni. And after earning a degree in civil engineering from OSU, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps in 1989. He served in, Brian, make sure I get all this stuff right, because letters and numbers. AH-1W Cobra gunship helicopter pilot, and he worked around the world. He was in North Africa, Europe, the Middle East, Haiti, Cuba, and the United States. Most recently with the 3rd Marine Division in Japan, Korea, Thailand, and Australia. He served 2 flying tours in Iraq and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross with Combat Distinguishing Service for Valor. He flew more than 220 combat missions and was inducted into the Ohio Military Hall of Fame for valor. As former Marine Light Attack Helicopter Squadron Commander, Brian holds a master's degree in strategic studies from the U.S. Army War College and a leadership certificate from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. He retired in 2014 after completing 25 years of uniformed service. He doesn't look that old, but he was there for a long time. He is currently Executive Director of Turning Point Counseling Services in Mahoning County, and he sits on the board of AMVET's National Service Foundation Charities. Please help me in welcoming Brian.
Jimmy, thank you very much for the warm welcome, and Dave, thank you. Appreciate the welcome here to the Salem Historical Society. I greatly enjoy coming to organizations such as this. Anybody that takes close heed and pays close attention to the history of an organization, the history of a municipality, a city, a town, they usually have the best viewpoint going forward. So when you capture what artifacts were during a certain era, or you capture a certain behavior or what people used to do, say back in the 19th century, I think what you do is you extrapolate this line that shows where we'll be in the future. And I think people that pay very close attention to history, I think help map what our future will be and ought to be. So first of all, thank you for having me here. When I first moved here, I was the guy pressed up against the windows outside looking in because I had no idea that this existed. I bought the house that we live in on South Lincoln. I bought it while I was just home on leave from Okinawa. My wife and I were coming back. We were starting to get the retirement itch, decided we wanted to come back to Northeast Ohio. And so we came back, and Salem spoke out to me and said, this is where I think we need to settle. So when we got here, I bought the house. Like I said, I was on leave, so I was pretty busy during that leave session, filling out paperwork and getting a loan and doing all the things in a house inspection. So I didn't really know Salem as well as I thought I did. So this was one of the hidden jewels that I knew nothing about. And so when we were out walking around, I was pressed up against the window looking at everything, saying, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff. So I can't wait for me to be done talking so I can go in that room and look and see what we got. I recognize the gravity of what today is, November the 8th. It is the 8th, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, here we go. All right, so it's November the 8th, and it's election night. We have a term-limited president who will be stepping down in January. We have two people that are running to be the replacement or the next president of the United States. So I recognize, as Ginny had alluded to, that leadership is very much central to what we're all concerned about right now. We want a great leader for this nation. We may not all agree on what values ought to be 1 through 5. My 1 through 5 may be 5, 2, 3, 4, 1 for Ginny, excuse me, Virginia. But ultimately, we're all concerned about it. And Virginia gave a wonderful definition of what leadership is, and mine is very, very simple, and it's just this. It's an art form, and so I call it the art of getting a very diverse group of people to do the cohesive and same thing at the same time and make them think it was their idea in the first place. So that to me is the essence of leadership. You see it all the time in the military, in my case the Marine Corps. You would see people get together and actually work very, very well together. And we may marvel at that and go, well, we love our military because they're so great and they're so well trained. But it's a direct reflection of our society. So why doesn't it look like that in society, and why is it function so well in the military? Well, the answer is what's missing. So what's missing from, say, 1950 until now? You look at the behavior of your children, your grandchildren, me. I look at the change in behavior in myself from when I've got my first smartphone. I got this thing, and now if I want to socialize, I may not sit down and talk with you face to face and have a cup of coffee like we used to do before I got this blasted thing. I would send you a text, and you could read it whenever you wanted, and you'd send it to me. And we look at how we converse with our children, with our grandchildren, and so on, and we look at what it means to actually communicating. So this is probably one of the biggest changes, the greatest blessing and the greatest curse in terms of how we behave and interact on a human level. So what does that have to do anything with leadership? Well, the first and fundamental building block of leadership is followership. If you can't follow, how could you possibly lead? And if you can't follow, why would you ever expect anybody to get out in front of you and try to get you to do something cohesive at the same time and make you think it was your own idea? How does that all work together? Well, most of what I would call leadership in the 21st century is chaos. I define communication. We've already determined that it's much more difficult. But if you have an email address, and I'm sure you all do, maybe 10% of what you get in your email inbox is actually for you. The rest of it's the equivalent of junk mail. You're getting junk mail, and now we've got a name for it. Spam, it used to be a delicious, canned meat, and now it's something that you don't want in your email inbox. Somebody had to invent that. Spam was not a word we use for anything other than, canned meat. And by the way, if anybody's ever spent any time in Hawaii for an extended period of time, or Okinawa, that's a delicacy. It really is. My kids, if I put Spam in the frying pan and fry it up, that is fine dining in the Kennedy household. They really do like it. And most people they don't care for Spam, but does anybody like Spam? I mean, I do.
Austin has a Spam festival.
Oh, who does?
Austin, Texas.
Really?
They have a 3-day Spam festival.
Well, I know where I'm going on vacation. Okay, so we know that it's chaos in the 21st century. It's chaotic. I mentioned your spam inbox. Think of how much information you're now processing than what you used to have to process. I remember there was a way, if you were getting junk mail at your house, you would just return to sender, or make them return the wrong address or whatever, and they'd stop doing it because you were making them pay twice the postage. There's no way to do that now. You can buy programs and things like that, but after a while, I noticed I just shut down. I just shut down and go, that's not for me, delete, and maybe the software takes care of some of it. But I notice I'm not paying attention anymore. I'm not paying attention because it's not important to me. So now think about a young person who only has known the personal computer, has only known email, and now email is a thing of the past. It was black magic to you and I when it first came out. I remember the first time, and I sat there and I watched my boss. I was leaning over him on the ship, and he was working on an email program that I had never heard of. It was email. I never heard of that. So he's doing it, and all of a sudden, this line shows up, and it says it's unread, and he clicks on it, and it's an email from the United States. and I'm aboard ship, and I'm used to writing letters and, you know, sending teletype messages that would go over the radio transmission system. And I'm also used to doing radio telephone calls to ham operators back in the States if you wanted somebody to call your wife if something was going on, like the Red Cross. Somebody in your family had passed. That's how they would get a hold of you. And that had gone on for probably 50 years. That's how you communicated aboard ship. And now all of a sudden, there's somebody sending via computer, travels almost instantaneously, what the speed of light would be, and we're communicating. And now there we all are, you know, greater than the age of 50 now trying to deal with this and recognizing that we're shutting down. As followers, we are shutting down and not paying attention. Think how confusing and how difficult it actually is to get through to somebody that's between the age of 10 and 20, and more importantly, between the age of 18 and 20, when they decide they want to join the armed forces. How is it that you get through to them? Well, you know, in boot camp, you just say, well, nobody has phones. That's easy. I take you back to the 1950s or the 1960s. If we want to communicate, I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to respond appropriately, physically or verbally, and we are going to get you to adapt at followership. You become a good follower. So now we're building the basic building blocks of leadership. I can lead you if you can follow. So when you get to the 21st century, we spring forward. Well, now we have all this chaos with all the things that I'm trying to juggle in my own head, juggle in my own life. People can reach me now. If I'm in a combat environment, I can FaceTime every night when I get back from whatever it is that I'm doing. Hey, honey, I will be back in 3 hours. You know, so on and so forth. And you can actually drag your family. If you really think about it, you can drag your family electronically to a combat zone, and they can participate with you on a good portion of what you're actually doing. There's a real downside to that. There is something very beneficial in the detachment of, I will contact you via letter, or I will contact you via telephone call every Sunday after I go to church, or you know, something like that, so that you can stay focused and you can concentrate on what's going on. All that clutter, all that electronic clutter makes it very, very difficult to reach a human being now. I have the greatest of ease to reach any one of you, and everybody that's still alive in your family tree, if I just ask for a phone number from you. And I'm not going to call them, because now I'm going to communicate with them from the safety of staying right here, where I don't have to introduce myself, I don't have to say anything, I can just send something, and I can say, your relative or loved one came to the Salem Historical Society tonight, and that is as much interaction as we have to do. So we're not very good at the interactive part of being human. You know, all those human needs that we really need, we're not touching on those. This is starting to sound, you know, pretty almost emotional, but it's important. I mean, if you really want to reach people, wouldn't you think that there's a level of human interaction that they're going to demand from you? Why would you think that I cared about you if all I'm doing is treating you like, you know, ones and zeros in binary code? You know, isn't there some sort of give and take, some sort of, hey, how you doing? Knowing your name, not just your last name, but your first name, your last name, maybe what your wife's name is, or the fact that you're married, or if you have kids, where you come from in the United States. And, you know, lo and behold, if I'm in charge, I would think that I would have a vested interest in sending them back to wherever their hometown is, if that's where they want to go back to when they're done with their tour in the United States Marine Corps. I should give them back in better condition than I brought them. So I should take care of them as good or better than their parents do. So what makes a smart leader with all this chaos and confusion and clutter and just the very rote, difficult manner in which we have to lead somebody? There's no very simple answer to that. But instead of answering questions with questions, what I will say is that the best way that you need to lead somebody is you have to know and understand when technology is assisting you and when technology is hindering you. You have to span between 2016 and back to 1950. And most people, if they say that's good leadership, they will more often than not enjoy what you offer them in the 1950 model. They will enjoy the fact that you go out and you know, you say, hey, I'm Brian Kennedy, how you doing tonight? Yeah, it's you know, and talking with them, interacting with them. They enjoy that. But if you get out there and all you have to offer them is something that looks very much like it came out of a book, a textbook, and there's nothing personal, there's nothing human behind it, young Marines see through that almost immediately. I had a squadron commander in Iraq, my first tour in Iraq, and he just said that I want you all to be calm. And that's a very difficult thing to ask for. But the way that he said it was, he said, calm is contagious, much like panic. So be calm. So calm, like panic, is contagious. If somebody is losing their mind and you have no idea what's going on, you may think that something very, very bad is happening. You just haven't been told yet. But if you're calm, even when there's no good reason to be calm, people are just going to stay calm. And I remember my co-pilot, the night we flew into Iraq for the first time, it was the night of the invasion, and I think the date was probably the 19th of March of 2003. We were standing outside and we were doing a walkthrough. We had a very specific way that we were taking down the border posts, outposts. We were taking down the one artillery forward observer site on the only hill that was on the border. And an Iraqi cruise missile flew right over top of our heads at about 100 feet. And it has a jet engine in it, so you could hear it. And it was screaming right over top of us. And we were all standing outside, and it impacted probably 500 yards just south of us. And I remember my co-pilot just looked up and said, well, I guess we ought to get to the bunker. That's something you don't see every day. And, you know, just as calm as could be. And, you know, we were all looking at something like that, and that's absolutely true. Well, there's something you just don't see every day. So off we go into the bunker, and then we stay there for a couple hours, and then we'll fly, you know, just after sunset. You know, in this historical society, I mentioned, you know, that line from history to future through the present, and I think most often than not, we have a tendency to have a relatively negative viewpoint of the future. We're not happy because we look at our childhood, we look at the 1970s, the 1940s, you know, whatever time it was that you grew up and you recognized what family values, what American values that you cherished, and you look at how those values fit into 2016. And I think you might say that those values don't seem to be as valuable as they used to be to the average American. And so that line from history to the line in the future, I think would probably be going down in your mind. And I'm hoping that I give you a little bit of hope, because I've seen a different vantage point in my time in the Marine Corps. You know, we've been an all-volunteer force since, I think, 1974 when they got rid of the draft. I think I've got that date right, with the exception of maybe a year or so. And since 1974, we've been an all-volunteer force. And as a United States, I think we value that. We value that we're all volunteers. But there's a good part of that and there's a bad part of that. The good part of it is we have less than 1% of the society and definitely less than 10 million individuals that serve at any one time. And 10 million is a lot, okay? But if you think we have a 300 million population and 10 million, you can see we're most definitely less than 1%. My point is it doesn't take much to defend this nation, and they all do it willingly, they all do it of their own free volition, and they want to go forth and they want to serve. Why do they even bother? I remember getting asked that question when I was at Ohio State, and you know, people knew that I was training to go in the Marine Corps, and they said, why would you even do that? You know, it seems like a waste of time. Why would you even do that? And the best thing, and it's a tough thing to talk about patriotism as an 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old. It's a tough thing to talk about because you're starting to talk about your most innermost feelings, how you actually feel, and what the definition of who you really are is. And I would say something like, I want to deserve the freedom that I have. I want to deserve it. I don't want to just, you know, mosey on up to the table and sit down and go, hey, pass me the freedom. You know, pass me all the good things that this nation has to offer. I wanted to earn it. I wanted to do my part. I wanted to be like Roy Jones down the street, Marine in the South Pacific when I was a little kid. I want to be like Roy. I want to be like my cousin Ted across the street. You know, I wanted to be like John Zaxik across the street. I wanted, he was in the Marine Corps. I wanted to be, like all my mom's side of the family. They were, one was a tank driver in the Second World War, and one was in the Navy on board an aircraft carrier. I wanted to do my part, and a lot of times that doesn't translate very well as we get further and further away from a society where we view ourselves as the member of something bigger. And usually we identify it as, I'm a member of St. Paul's Church. I'm a member of, the Salem Historical Society. And the more and more technology that I have and the more and more technology that I'm offered, I become the expert on just about anything. And so I tend to identify myself more as an individual. I can answer every question and anything that I ever want to know. And I notice that I do that. If I have a question, Dak Prescott, the guy that plays for this is one that came up over the weekend. Dak Prescott, the guy that's tearing it up down in Dallas. Now, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but this guy's tearing it up. He's replaced Tony Romo. He's doing wonderful as the Dallas Cowboys quarterback. And I'm thinking, well, I wonder where he went to college.
Mississippi State.
Where did he go?
Mississippi State.
Did he really? See, I never looked it up. I never actually looked it up. But I was thinking to myself, so I had to look that up. And so I'm just kind of going around and around.
Didn't take him.
I'm sorry?
Browns could have had him, they didn't take him.
Well, yeah, they're 0-9 now, so. I'm a Browns fan. Are you a Browns fan?
Always have been,
Yeah. I feel like I cheer for the clothing line. And I don't like the new orange. I like the old orange. I'm okay with the pants, but I wish it didn't say Browns. If it was just a big stripe, I don't need all that stuff on it. And Cleveland right here, that's okay, but I digress. What was I talking about before I got on the Browns?
Looking things up yourself.
Okay, yeah, looking things up. So I have become the center of my own universe. If you think about it, it's all about me getting smart. It's all about me advancing myself, and also advancing. My world's shrinking. If you really think about it, it's just shrinking. I'm able to solve my own problems. I'm able to do things, and I don't need your help anymore. I could just look it up and I could do it myself. And it's served as a bit of a detriment, I think, in that regard. So we get to tonight, this election, and we look at what we really yearn for in a leader. And we want somebody that can lead a very diverse group of people in this United States and lead us into the right direction for the right reasons, and make us think it was our own idea. Most of the discussion that you hear between the two major party candidates is how wonderful a commander-in-chief that they will be. Now, that is probably the equivalent of me explaining to somebody just how wonderful of an eye doctor that I'm going to be. I'm not an eye doctor. I have no experience in it whatsoever, but it would be like me telling somebody just how wonderful I would be at it. I don't know that. And I also don't know that the two people that are running have any clue whatsoever on how to implement a national strategy to defeat terrorism, to defeat and destroy ISIS, and to make sure that we recognize and defend our sovereignty as the United States. I'm not sure that either one has a clear concept of how that's to be done. But I do know that they've articulated it very clearly that they know how to do it better than the other person. So what I like to do is at least take a step back and look at what they have to offer, and then recognize if they really can lead a military. I think the best way to lead a military is to know what you went through, know what they went through. Having a military member, officer, enlisted 2 years, 25 years, doesn't matter. I think it's now become a thing of the past, not a permanent thing of the past, but I think it's become at least a part of the thing of the past, where the last 3 out of the 4 presidents, I think is about right, the last 3 out of the 4 presidents have not served. Neither one of these candidates have served. So how can we say that we're getting somebody that knows how to lead such a wonderful armed forces in the international arena? I think we all collectively get sold a bill of goods on that, and I don't think either party or either candidate really answers, the prospective voter. I don't think it answers to us that they are qualified. So I'm going to watch that very closely. When the sun rises tomorrow, which is, if the good Lord wills it, there's a 100% chance of it happening. One individual winning or losing is not going to cause the sun not to rise. I'm trying to get back away from the person-centric or the human-centric viewpoint of what it means to be an American. I think to be an American, I think it means to be exceptional. I think we need to be exceptional in the world, and I think that the world needs us to do that. You know, in the mass media era of national politics, especially those that have run for president, I think what we have found is that since 1960 until now, the American people love balance. And I've never heard this analyzed, but we really do love balance. If you think about it, let's say, for example, you're a Democrat, and you get together with your Democrat friends, and you talk about how things would be just so much better if all those Republicans would go away or wise up and become Democrats. But that's not the way that it works. And it's never worked that way. You're defining perfection, and you're defining a homogeneous society, which we're not. You know, we're not. So you're never going to get rid of those pesky Republicans or those pesky Democrats. It's really all about how well you work together. How well we all work together for the common good and make us think it was our own idea. It sounds like leadership. And no really one person has to do that. But a good example from either side, either party, either no party at all, just being a good neighbor, I think really is the essence of what it means to be a leader. So from the mass media era, from 1960 until now, in that balance that we love, we have seen typically the sitting president win a second term. And then after you get to a term-limited president who has to step down, and you run two new candidates from those parties, more often than not, you see the American public choose the opposite party. Because our actions dictate that we demand balance. We demand balance. There have been obviously a couple of very specific exceptions to that. John F. Kennedy's assassination, Lyndon Johnson recognizing that he couldn't go on as the commander-in-chief during the Vietnam War, President Nixon stepping down after he had won a second term early because of the Watergate scandal, and then the exception would be Jimmy Carter and George Bush Sr., because the people wanted something different sooner than that 8 years. The balance was so far out of whack. The American people wanted something different. So I would like to just offer some hope to you here in regards to what the military offers us as a society. We know how to get along with one another. We know how to follow, and we know how to lead. We know how to get along as black, white, Asian, Latino, you name it. We know how to do that. So race and racism doesn't really matter. We don't care who you are. I don't care if you're black, I don't care if you're Latino or whatever, but I do care what you do. I care what you do, and I care how well you do it. It's really more about the quality than the quantity. Quantity of pigment, quality of the work. It's always going to be about the quality of the work. So I'll put it to you this way. Military members are very, very humble individuals. They really are. They have a tendency to just focus on being part of that team, going back to that 1950s model. And military society is very much a thing of the past. It really is. We come out of the past. If you go to boot camp now, somebody goes from 2016, and they go all the way back somewhere into the 60s. And you know what we did? You know what we did to them? We took away all those confusing things that they have to deal with. All that clutter that's going around in their head. All they have to do is focus on one thing: followership and being a good teammate. So the humility that they have, and it's said in the book of Matthew, he who exalts himself shall be humbled, and he who is humbled shall be exalted. And those exalted individuals do wonderful, wonderful things during their time in uniform. And so then they come back, and I think they have a lot to offer American society. Sometimes if they've seen combat at an intimate level, they get stuck. They get stuck in their ability to come back, and they get stuck in their ability to actually affect the society that they have come back to. The warriors, I think they're selfless creatures. They fight as a team. They fight as a family. And trust me when I say there's no better way to thank a veteran or to thank somebody that's serving is to include them and to show them through your own example how wonderful a society it is that they're coming back to. So if I see the folks over here being wonderful neighbors to the folks over here, the people see that and they go, wow, what I did was really all worth it. It's not the free lunch or the ball game tickets or anything like that. It's really all about seeing that society functioning very, very well. And John F. Kennedy said it best. He goes, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. It's all about that action. And if you're an actionable, good neighbor and an emulatable American, I think that really is what does the very best for our veterans. So how do we thank them? Here's the punchline. Just by being great Americans. Be a great American, be a great example. It's not about you. It really isn't. It's not about you. I think we say that a lot. I know I say it to my kids. I can remember distinctly my parents saying that to me. It's not all about you. But I think that's really the essence of it. If you're focused on being an American and you're focused on being a good neighbor, I think that's really the core of what leadership is to the average citizen, to include the veteran. If we're a good neighbor, I am leading the rest of the people around me on how we can best thrive and how we can best function. A lot of times, and I just did it, I quoted at least one president in here in the book of Matthew, but this was an anonymous soldier who wrote this. He said, "I now know why men who have been to war yearn to reunite, not to tell stories or look at old pictures, and not to laugh or not to weep. Comrades gather because they long to be with the men who once acted at their best, men who suffered and sacrificed together, who were stripped of their humanity. I didn't get to pick these men. They were picked by the Army, and they were picked by the fate and delivered by the fate of the military in the United States. But I know them in a way I know no other man. I have never given anyone such trust. They were willing to guard something more precious than my life, and they would have carried my reputation and the memory of me back to my family. It was part of the bargain that we all made with one another, the reason we were so willing to die for one another. As long as I have memory, I will think of them all every day. I am sure that when I leave this world, my last thought will be of my comrades and my family, and my comrades lost." So with that said, I miss being in uniform. I miss serving. I miss being deployed. I miss doing, the very, what I think the essence of what it means to serve is I miss helping and taking care of people. But that helped guide me from the history through the present to the future, is that it's all about service. For me anyway. I loved service then. I just had to find my niche when I got back here. And my niche right now is I'm running a behavioral health organization in Mahoning County. And I am not a behavioral health guy. I don't know the first thing about it. But I have a lot of professionals that do. But what they needed was, they needed leadership. They were choked and clogged up, in the trap in the sink. They were just stuck there. And all I had to do was open up the drain so that they could do their job. And that part, I think, really puts some spring in my step. I like doing that part. So with that, I'm going to leave you with one more quote, and this one's back to another president. I gave you a Democrat president, and now I'm going to give you a Republican president because it's election night, and I want to be fair. And this one's from Ronald Reagan, and he said, "Freedom is a fragile thing, and it's never more than one generation away from extinction. It's not ours by inheritance, and it must be fought for and defended constantly by each generation. For it comes only once to a people, and those who have known it, and have known freedom and then lost it, have never known it again." So I salute your efforts, what you do here in the Salem Historical Society. I appreciate your backward look that I equate to a forward look. And I'm humbled and honored to be here, and I want to thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
We want to thank Brian for joining us. Also ask that anyone who has served in the military would join us for a photo this evening.